Hi and welcome to the NATO Public Forum YouTube studio. My name is Reichelt. I'm a journalist creator and I'm here today with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iceland, but Minister Gylfadóttir. Did I say this right?
Yes, very good.
Let me just know, how often do you have to explain your name?
Very, very often, even in Iceland, because four names is quite long, even in Iceland. So
even a special name for that country.
Yeah, but it's normally I know it's a challenge for everyone to pronounce, but it's also a good icebreaker.
Yeah, true. Your nation has less than 400,000 citizens, and it's quite special in NATO context because you're one of the only allies that do not have a standing military. Yeah. So for everyone who's not too familiar with your country and the alliance, could you just briefly tell me, what do you bring to NATO and what do you take out of the alliance?
Yeah. Well, NATO is, our membership there is the cornerstone of our national security policy. We are a founding member of NATO, 1 out of 12. But on the sides, at the same time, we had a bilateral defense agreement with the US. Mm-hmm. Our contribution is basically literally the location of Iceland, in the middle between Europe and North America. We have an air base in Iceland, where we have host nation support. We have investments both from our own, but also from the US and NATO as well. We have radio stations around the country which feed NATO with information 24/7. And then we have a good cooperation with friends and allies. For example, the US with submarine surveillance, and very important cooperation, and we want to be and we try to be a reliable ally, but as you mentioned, we are in a unique position, being the only country that doesn't have an army. The US was there up until 2006, then we took the airbase over. Mm-hmm. And so we contribute, but we are also extremely thankful for all the great cooperation with our great friends and allies.
Yeah, so quite a special role that you and your country have there. As NATO is celebrating their 75th anniversary, do you think the justification for NATO has changed over the years, and if yes, in what ways?
Well, I think it's important to remember why NATO was founded at the time. And for me, it's also important to remind ourselves that NATO is not only about tanks, weapons. It's about fundamental principles. It's an alliance where we have the obligation to protect and cherish democracy, individual freedom, and the rule of law. Mm-hmm. And if somebody would have, our generation was basically promised that the things that we're seeing now would not happen again in our continent. And now it's happening. So, of course, we've seen just through the couple of last years how much stronger NATO has become with new great members which contribute tremendously to the alliance with increased defense spending. And it's also a stark reminder on the fact that these fundamental principles, they have to be cherished and fought for always, and we can never allow ourselves to be complacent. I mean, we see that now, and NATO has never been as strong as now, and the unity is crucial, and the collective responsibility and the collective political will and courage to be sure that the world order as we know it will continue to thrive. And those fundamental things are now being attacked and tested. And there, each and every alliance, with also great partners outside the alliance, we all have a role to play.
Mm. As you've said, we now live in a world, in a situation that we wouldn't have thought about maybe 10 years ago. And the war in Ukraine has been going on for roughly 2.5 years now. Do you remember the day the war broke out, where you were and
yes.
what you were thinking? Take us back to that situation.
I was. It was in the middle of the night, and before I went to sleep, we had some information that might be the time. And I remember how I was woken up with the messaging also before I went to sleep, thinking that I would wake up possibly in a different world with new norms and new reality. And the following days after as well, for example, when we decided to assist our allies that wanted to ship weapons to Ukraine, just in the very early days, like 2 days after the invasion, I was actually standing, in my son's room on the phone, making those or preparing those decisions. And it's a weird experience for a young person from the safest country in the world, Iceland, a founding member of NATO, where we are lucky enough and fortunate enough to have these fundamental freedoms, and to look at your children, not that it's literally them, but just that generation, and to realize how easy it is to take those rights back and to change the world in a negative way. So we all have to understand and really get it to our peoples what is at stake and what is now being fought, because it's not only about Ukraine. It is literally, and it's not a phrase or cliche to say it. They are literally fighting our fight. So what we have to do is to support and assist them, to make it clear to them, to make it clear to us, and to make it clear to the others that are looking and seeing how things will go. Because, Russia is not the only country that has bad intentions.
As we are now 2.5 years into the war, in a lot of countries, when you look at the polls and stuff, you see that some people are losing interest in the conflict, or they're seeing that a lot of money goes to Ukraine and they ask for the money in the nations itself. What would you say to those people?
I mean, we're all human beings, and we get things start to normalize, and I can say that I do understand it up to a certain point, but it's just very, very important to realize it's always better to pay your insurance than not to pay your insurance, and then possibly the worst thing happens, and then it's going to cost so much more. Not only in currency, not only economically, also just in the fundamental freedoms that we now, have, and even in lives. I mean, we see it from history. We have to understand and learn from history, but we also have to know that history does not have to repeat itself. We are holding the pen now. We can prevent the worst thing from happening, and paying the insurance is a smarter move than to end up with much additional cost. Of course, it does mean sacrifices, and it's normal, and it's more complicated in democratic societies. Democracy is. It can be chaotic, and it can be messy. Everyone has a voice. You have all the issues on the table, while the autocratic state can hide them until, sometimes it breaks. But we also have to be honest, and we have to be honest with our peoples. We have to listen, and we have to also be sincere and talk like more human, I would say.
Talking about paying insurance, how do you look at this year? How do you look at the year coming up and the presidential elections that are coming up? This is also a huge topic here on the summit.
Yeah, I mean, it's talked about, and we can all have our opinions, but for me the priority is to, elections in every state is a domestic democratic process. There will be some outcome of that, and we will work with that. That's just how it goes. Our priority is to make it clear for ourselves, between ourselves and to our peoples, that we are ready to do what has to be done to prevent the worst thing from happening, and to support Ukraine to win this war, and then being brought under the NATO umbrella. What will happen in the coming months and after the elections? I don't have a single vote in that. So my role is basically to work with the outcome. But of course, it's important for everyone to understand what's at stake. And the U.S., like every other nation, needs true friends and allies. They have true friends and allies, and I hope that we will all be clever enough to work with that together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this interview, and thank you for tuning in here at the NATO Public Forum YouTube studio. Thank you.